All right, welcome to Thursday's class. Today we are going to be learning about China, and we are going to start with section 1 of chapter 16. Before we get into the section though, I want you to warm up by thinking about what you know and want to know about China. So take about 30 seconds. Maybe you want to discuss this with a partner. What do you already know about China? And what do you want to know about China? Okay, so today we want to know what made China a world power, and how did the Ming and then the Qing dynasty decline, and how did China interact with the West? The secondary goal is to read the textbook effectively and to become more of an active reader. So that's what we're going to be doing in class today. We will be reading your textbook, so basically you have time to do your homework and filling out an active reader worksheet that looks at predicting, questioning, connecting, clarifying, visualizing, and summarizing all skills of an active reader. So there are two sections that you're going to be reading in chapter 16.1. I should say there are two different dynasties, the Ming and the Qing. So when you're learning about the Ming dynasty, here's what I want you to focus on. These are the key phrases to really hone in on in your book. The first is the Ming dynasty truly began a new era of greatness. The second is Yang Li began construction of the imperial city, one of the really amazing things that the Ming dynasty created. The third is the voyages were never halted, never to be revived. This is referring to the voyages of Zheng He, and this graphic here shows a comparison of Zheng He's ship, and then this ship in the middle is Columbus's ship. I think it's the Nina, but it might be the Santa Maria. But these ships were really, truly amazing, and you're going to learn a little bit about them, so pay attention to that. Third phrase, the Europeans were only an unusual form of barbarian. What's that in regard to? Fourth phrase, the Ming Dynasty gradually began to decline. And the fifth phrase, also dealing with decline, created an opportunity for the Manchus. So what created this opportunity for the Manchus? What led to the decline? Those are the phrases I want you to focus on while you're learning about the Ming. Then we're going to move on to taking notes. So here's the way that I want you to take notes for today on the reading. Just a little T-chart, characteristics of the Ming Dynasty, characteristics of it at its height and at its fall. So remember, we're focusing on active reading. So we're going to be reading and making these notes before we actually do our worksheet. So you're going to make a little chart, T-chart. You're going to have a Ming Dynasty at the top and height and fall. This picture here is a picture of a building inside the Forbidden Palace, also built by the Ming Dynasty. And I'm going to show you another picture of the Forbidden City in just a moment. So this is the Great Wall of China, also built by the Ming. Now, there were previous Great Walls of China, but this is the one of this time period. The one that we have today is the one that the Ming built. And they just discovered that it's actually twice as many thousands of miles as they thought it was about a month ago. Nobody apparently had ever done a study on that. And here we have the Forbidden City from the outside, the most popular tourist destination in the world. It's kind of ironic because it was forbidden for so long, and now it is the most popular place for people to go in China. The Forbidden City was really the dwelling of the elites, the emperor and his concubines and his wives and his eunuchs and his other advisors. It's like the mandarins would stay in this forbidden city, and some emperors, especially during the decline of the period, never even left the palace. So you'll be reading about that today too. This is another thing you'll be reading about, the school service or civil service examinations. This is a Confucian school on the left and waiting for civil service examinations on the right. You can see everybody crowding to get the examination results. And this slide just refers to Christianity in China. Christianity in China is pretty interesting. The Jesuits, who, if you recall or have been paying attention to the news, you know that the new Pope, Pope Francis, is a Jesuit. They were actually had kind of a contentious relationship with the Pope or with the church at this time because Jesuits like Matteo Ricci went to China and they kind of were influenced by Chinese culture and tried to convert the Chinese by using their own language and things like that. And that flexibility really backfired because other religious groups started speaking out against the Jesuits. Other Christian religious groups in China, they were angry because the Jesuits were getting too many converts and they were worried that the Jesuits were kind of watering down their principles. So they wrote a letter to the Pope, and the Pope responded to China, the Chinese emperor, and said basically, you guys are all barbarians and you should convert to Christianity. And in response, the emperor kicked them out. So you'll be reading about the Christianity in China a little bit as well. And lastly, you'll be reading about the Qing dynasty. So here are the phrases I want you to pay attention to with the Qing. So first of all, to identify the rebels, the government, the Qing ordered. What did they order? The Qing tried to preserve their distinct identity within Chinese society. How did they do that and why? These are the key phrases, again, you should be paying attention to in the book. Kangxi was quite tolerant of the Christians. Kind of interesting, especially considering the last slide. The first signs of decay appeared. Why did this happen? And Britain had an unfavorable trade balance with China. What does that mean? So these key phrases, remember to pay attention to them as you're reading. Feel free to rewind the video to the first key phrases and then the second as you are going through the chapter. What I'd like you to do as you are reading is to make a second T-chart exactly like the first, with the, instead of the Ming Dynasty this time, the Qing Dynasty. 4 characteristics at its height and 4 characteristics at its fall. Remember, you'll use this when you are making or answering the questions in the active reading worksheet. So, good luck. Hope everything is going well. I will see you when you return from spring break.